Okay, here we go. I've got the door of the airplane open, as you can see, and we're going to start the checklist. So the first thing we do is we look in our little handy dandy checklist holders, and I'm going to start out with this portion of the checklist, which is before starting engines and after the walk-around. Okay, here we go. Pre-flight complete. 2, control and rudder locks removed. So we take out this control lock to make sure that we're clear and we have good movement of the control surfaces. Okay, next, number 3, fuel selectors on main tanks. So we will look down here and we see the fuel selectors are indeed on the main tanks. So next, we're going to do 4, landing gear switch down, which it is, landing gear switch down. 5, all circuit breakers in. We had 2 circuit breakers pulled here, so we'll put those circuit breakers in. 6, all switches off. So all of these white buttons, the switches are off. 7, mixtures, props, and throttles set. So these are the mixtures, these are the props, and these are the throttles. So let me explain a little bit for you younger folks who don't know exactly how the mixtures, props, and throttles work. The throttles are like the gas pedals. So this is for the right engine, this is for the left engine. So they're like the gas pedals. The props, this controls the pitch of the prop, so it actually turns the prop blade. So we want the props to be relatively flat when we take off, and we want them to be at a steeper angle when we go into cruise configuration. And these levers with the red knobs are the mixture controls. And what the mixture controls do is they change the amount of fuel that's fed to the engine. In a car, you use a certain proportion of gas and air to run the mixture to create combustion. Up in an airplane, when you get higher, the air is thinner, so you use less fuel to maintain that ratio. So as we get higher in the air, we pull the mixture back. Now to stop the plane completely, we pull the mixture all the way back to where it is now. And for takeoff, we'd set the mixture all the way forward. And then as we get to cruise flight, we will pull the mixture back to whatever the appropriate setting is. Okay, so the next thing we do is that we put our seat belts on, and we want to make sure that the cowl flaps are closed, the alternate air vents are closed, and we can turn on our alternators and our battery. So we can turn on the battery here, and we turn on the right and the left alternator. And what we do now is we're going to check our lights. So we start over here with the low fuel lights. That comes on. I press this one, that comes on. The low voltage light is already on because the engines are not started. We see 3 green lights here because all 3 landing gears, the nose, the left, and the right main gear, are down. We check this to see if it's working with the gear unlocked and in transit. That's working. We can see both our alternator failure lights are on because the engines are not running. And we want to check our heater overheat light, and that works. We want to check that our heater is off, that it's off and the vents are closed. And these are the outside air vents. We want to check that these outside air vents are open. And basically, that's what we're going to do. And before we start, we're going to turn on our anti-collision light, which is the light on the tail of the aircraft. And we're not going to turn our strobe lights on until we get on the runway. That's just common pilot courtesy, especially at night. You don't turn on your strobes until you're ready to pull onto the runway. And I think that's about it for the pre-starting checklist of this aircraft. Okay, we just turned on the outside generator and we see that the Garmin G500 has come alive. Apparently the G500 and the G600 are amazingly similar, except the G600 is for a heavier gross weight airplane. We'll press continue, and I'll show you here that we can either see the flight information as far as pitch, speed, and altitude on the right side of the screen, or we can make it full screen, which is a nice touch. And we'll bring it back to the MFD function. I'd like to give a shout out to Jerry Wagner. He's the one who inspired me to do all of my airplane videos. I don't have the resources for as large of an airplane as he has. I've got many of the same Avionics, and I don't have the resources for filming that Jerry has. But he's done a wonderful job. He's a real credit to aviation flight videos, and thanks again, Jerry Wagner, for motivating me to start my own little video production service. And someday I hope to be even halfway as good as you are, Jerry. Thanks again. Okay, now we'll turn on the master switch, and some of our other things will come alive here. We see our second Garmin radio right here, where I usually put in the ground frequency and the ATIS frequency, but this can be used as a GPS also. It's sort of a smaller version of this GTN 750. These are the EDM 830 engine monitors, and right now it's asking, did we refuel? So we'll press yes here and yes here, and do we want to change the amount of fuel? We'll say yes, and we'll say yes. So right now the airplane thinks that it has 51.2 gallons remaining in the left wing and 50.5 gallons in the right wing. So let's just say that we want to add 20 gallons to it. So we'll say yes, we want to add 20 gallons to it. And we're going to add or subtract the fuel. So we hold this down for a second. Say yes, we refueled. And sometimes if you miss this on the initial setup, you can go to it by hitting both buttons. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to add fuel to the 51.2 gallons remaining in the left wing and the 50.5 gallons remaining in the right wing. So we'll push both buttons, hold them for a second, and we will see that this goes to the refuel, add or subtract. Now we're in the step mode where we're on the first cylinder. You see the square around cylinder number 1 on each engine. and it's going to step every so many seconds through the other cylinders. Now this shows you the exhaust gas temperature on the bottom left and the cylinder head temperature on the bottom right. Since the engines are not started, those temperatures are cold. And up at the top, it shows the manifold pressure for each engine in the top of the circle and the RPM in the bottom of the circle. And along the right side of each monitor, it shows the oil temperature, the oil pressure, the gallons per hour we're using, the remaining fuel, the outside air temperature, and the voltage, and a couple of other things which we won't get into right this second. So we can see that this is on the third cylinder, now on the fourth cylinder, while this is still on the third and just jumped to the fourth cylinder. You can synchronize these so they're on the same cylinder at the same time. But let's add 20 gallons to this 51.2. So we'll hold both of these buttons. We get into the program mode, and now it's going to ask us, did we refuel? Yes. Do we want to change it? Yes. And we'll change the amount of fuel, add or subtract fuel? Yes. So by holding the button, you add fuel, and that'll be the positive. So we'll just hold it, and it's adding fuel, and you can see how the number's changing. So it's going to add that much fuel. So we'll stop at 20. Okay, if you miss the setting of the amount of fuel on your first go through, you can press both of these buttons and hold them until you see the word program. Now it's going to change to refuel. You can say yes, and you can say I want to change the amount of fuel that this thinks it has. So right now it thinks it has 70.5 gallons. So if you hold it, the fuel will go up. Yes, add or subtract. So if you hold it, the fuel amount will go up by the amount you see right here. If you tap it, the fuel amount will go down. So that's basically how this works. And this is the Garmin GTN 750. This is the home page, and you can see the active frequency on the top, the frequency that we're going to use next below it, and to change that you just press the top frequency and they switch back and forth. We can ident on our ADS-B down here. We can put in the squawk number here, and this connect with each other, so that's very helpful. The little squares are going across the top: map, traffic, terrain, weather, charts, flight plan, procedures, waypoint info, whoops, I forgot nearest, waypoint info, utilities, and system. We'll explain this a little bit later. So this is our STEC 3100 Autopilot, which is a tremendous autopilot. This is the STEC 3100 Autopilot. It has the horizontal commands on the left side on the bottom, and the vertical commands on the right side on the bottom. When you turn the autopilot on, it lights up the flight director and the yaw damper, if you have a yaw damper. I don't, because I have an air conditioner in the tail of the plane, and the air conditioner does not allow for placement of the yaw damper. Anyway, when you get to where you want to be in terms of altitude and direction, you can make sure your heading mode is set on your G500 or G600 or whatever navigation device you have, and then you can hit heading. If you want to stay at the altitude you're currently at, hit altitude and it'll automatically go into altitude hold. Now if you want to go follow a GPS route or do an approach, you can hit nav and that will follow the GPS route that you have chosen. If you want to do an approach, you can do a GPS, ILS, or VOR approach. And once you're inbound to the approach, you're going to hit nav. And when you're actually on your final approach course, you can hit approach, and that'll allow you to capture the glide slope. To change altitude, you put in your new altitude in your flight director, or you can put it in the autopilot. So here we're going to say we're at 12,600 feet, and we're going to put in a new altitude of 10,000 feet. So to go down or up if we choose, we can choose how to get there by indicated airspeed or vertical speed. They recommend that if you're going up, choose indicated airspeed, an airspeed that you know your aircraft can hold. And if you're going down, choose a vertical speed, such as 800 feet per minute, something like that. And if you want to change the airspeed or the vertical speed, you can hit the up or down buttons. This also comes with a black background and yellow letters, and you can change that by hitting the menu and go into the settings in the menu to change that. Now, if you're flying IFR and you're all discombobulated and you don't know up from down, you can hit the level button, and that will level you out from any unusual attitude. What you then want to do once you're leveled out is you want to change your heading bug on your flight director or on your GPS to the heading which you are currently going. Then you hit the heading bug, and then if you want to maintain the altitude you're currently at, you hit altitude. So that's basically a quick rundown of the STEC 3500 Autopilot, and I found it to be a great autopilot, and I've been very, very happy with it.